Hey there, Christophe from the French Herbal. Motherwort has some character. You want to pick those beautiful flowering tops and then you end up with punctured fingers. And then you want to taste a leaf because you think, well, it belongs to the mint family, so it must be pleasant, right? And then wham, you get that bitter slap in your mouth and you think, gosh, that's disgusting. Who would want to drink that? And yet, what a powerful herb. One that you can easily grow in your garden, one that is absolutely stunning when it flowers, and so useful in your herbal cabinet. You guessed it, in this episode, we're talking about Motherwort. But before we start, a quick but important reminder, I'm not a doctor, pharmacist, or licensed healthcare professional. The information shared in this episode is for educational purposes only, not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any condition, and it does not replace professional medical care. In this episode, we will discuss heart, thyroid, and other type of issues that require medical follow-up. Okay, so Motherwort is a perennial plant that belongs to the Lamiaceae, the mint family. Its Latin name is Leonurus cardiaca. Leonurus literally means lion's tail, likely referring to the appearance of the plant's flower or seed heads, and cardiaca related to the cardiac functions, to the heart. We will talk about that in a few minutes. It's very easy to grow from seeds. I got mine years back from Strictly Medicinal Seeds, and this is not a paid endorsement. I just love the team and the project. And since then, I have used seeds from my own plants. I have grown Leonurus cardiaca and Leonurus sibiricus. The properties of those two are very similar. The plants are magnificent in the garden. I keep mine in an area with partial shade because the full sun is very strong in Provence, where I live in France. And I keep my plants well watered. Regular garden soil will do. It's not difficult to grow at all, but it does need regular watering. I have never seen the plant in nature in France. I think the exception would be if it escaped from a garden. If it grows in the wild in your region, let me know, I'm curious. The parts we used are the aerial parts, and more specifically, the leaves. You can pick the leaves before the flowering heads become prickly, from early spring when you have just the leaves to the beginning of the flowering period. You can dry the leaves, you can use them fresh. We will discuss preparations in a few minutes. The big stalk, the square, stalk, they're kind of inert from a constituent perspective, so you can just compost them. In terms of constituents, the mix is quite complex. We have iridoids, diterpenes, triterpenes, bitter glycosides, flavonoids, saponins, tannins, alkaloids. You could try to piece together the properties based on the constituents, but it will just give a very partial picture. At the end of the day, it's a very complex cocktail, and we don't really know which constituent is responsible for what action. Although we do have indications that, the alkaloids, for instance, they participate in the cardiac properties. The flavonoids bring anti-inflammatory effects along with the iridoids, etc., etc. This is a complex exercise, and for practicing herbalists, it's much better to move to the properties. In terms of taste, it's definitely very bitter, a bit acrid, and maybe slightly aromatic. The energetics are very cooling, calming, and drying. Okay, let's talk about the properties and indications now. Let's start with something easy to understand. It is a calming plant. It cools down a hot and overactive temper. But let's go beyond that and talk about specific indications for Motherwort. Anxiety and stress with heart palpitations. The person may suffer from poorly defined fears, anxiety, and anguish with the impression of chest tightening and a racing heart, so, palpitations due to anxiety. And To remember this property, let's go back to the name Motherwort, right? Taking Motherwort in this state of undefined fears is like having a mother at our side, protective and reassuring, whispering to us that everything will be okay. And very quickly, we see that Motherwort works well when the heart participates in the situation, when the heart rate is erratic. And of course, the first thing to do here is to consult a cardiologist. And if he or she tells you that everything is fine, that your situation is benign, and it's probably your nervous system playing tricks on you, as was my case a few years ago when I had extra systoles, then Motherwort can really help. Those arrhythmias by themselves, they are very anxiogenic. I know this because I had them. I had extra systoles a few years ago. I actually still have them these days once in a while. It's quite rare, but I still have them. And they're not fun at all. Your heart literally skips a beat and then it catches up by beating stronger for one beat. And it feels really weird, gets on your nerves. So there's a huge interplay between the heart and the nervous system. Motherwort will regulate the heart rhythm directly, but it also does a fine indirect job by regulating what we call the sympathetic excess, the dominance of the sympathetic nervous system that gets activated when we get into periods of stress. On the French side, Dr. Paul Belaïche studied Motherwort in the early 1980s. He tested it on 64 patients with great states of stress and anxiety and also suffering from cardiac rhythm issues. And he noted the following actions. He said, it seems to oppose the adrenergic reaction of the body, meaning the plant opposes an exaggerated stress response, an exaggerated sympathetic response, and it has an anxiolytic and sedative effect. It cools us down. And most of his patients in the study reported an attenuation of, or even the disappearance of their cardiac rhythm issues and the disappearance of the symptoms going with the cardiac rhythm issues like discomfort, unease, or even breathlessness and difficulty breathing. The association between Motherwort and the heart dates back to ancient times, and here is a good combination: Motherwort and hawthorn. Those two for distress of the emotional heart and distress of the physical heart. If there are no organic issues detected by your doctor, of course, great combination. Okay, let's stay with the cardiovascular system and talk about hypertension. Motherwort is sometimes used in formulas against elevated blood pressure. And here again, please check with your cardiologist first. But it will be particularly useful for blood pressure that varies a lot during the day. You know, maybe in the morning you're fine, and then midday there's a peak, and then it goes back down, and then goes back up again in the evening. This usually means your nervous system is playing a role here. If the elevated tension stays more or less flat during the day, then there are probably much better plants working on the kidneys more specifically. Although Motherwort will have also a generic antispasmodic action on the arteries here. And one of the alkaloids, Leonurin, seems to be responsible for that action. So it will relax those smooth arterial muscle to bring down the pressure a bit. That said, I believe it is better suited for hypertension of nervous origin with this fluctuating component throughout the day. A study conducted on patients suffering from hypertension, stage 1 and 2, accompanied by anxiety and sleep disturbances, demonstrated that Motherwort improves the person's psychological and emotional status as well as their hypertension. And in that study, I'll put the reference on my website, clear improvement was observed in like 30% of patients, and moderate improvement was observed in almost half of those patients. A quick pause to let you know that you can grab my free ebook on preparing herbal teas for the 4 seasons. It's full of simple recipes and blends you can make with herbs you can buy or even grow almost anywhere. The link is right below this episode. I hope you enjoy it. Now, what other condition do you know that creates a state of tension, agitation, palpitation, sweating, disrupted sleep? And if you think hyperthyroidism, you are correct. This is another indication for Motherwort. And for hyperthyroidism, a good pairing is with bugleweed, Lycopus europaeus, or other types of Lycopus will do as well. Lemon balm and hawthorn would also bring some welcome cooling and calming properties to the thyroid and the heart here. Again, this is a medical condition, so work with your doctor first. Okay, let's switch gear a little bit. The common name for the plant is Motherwort. So the herb of the mother, the herb of women. And Motherwort is very useful for stimulating the arrival of menstruation when it is either delayed or absent, particularly when those imbalances are due to a state of stress or anxiety. And here we go again with stress and anxiety, right? Kind of a signature for the plant. There is a phenomenon, not sure if you heard about it, called pregnenolone steal. There's a lot happening from a sexual hormone perspective when we are stressed, and it's happening right in the adrenal glands. I will simplify a lot just for the sake of not getting lost. Pregnenolone, which is derived from cholesterol, is the starting point for the synthesis of all steroid hormone in the adrenal glands, and it can basically branch into two pathways. One producing DHEA, and then testosterone and estrogens, and the other branch produces progesterone and then cortisol. So on the one hand, estrogen in one branch to regulate the menstrual cycle, other branch, the end product, cortisol, to regulate the stress response. Which one do you think has priority from a survival perspective? If you guessed cortisol production, you are correct. And this happens at the detriment of estrogen production. In other words, chronic stress can mess up the menstrual cycle through hormonal dysregulation. Pregnenolone steal, remember that expression. So Motherwort will work on both systems. It can help calm the person, and we already discussed this, and also it can bring back function to the reproductive organ in a direct way. Cazin, one of our famous countryside French doctor of the 1800s, told us that a concentrated Motherwort tea can cause abundant menstrual flow. And this property can be welcome in cases of amenorrhea, lack of menses. But wait, could it also be problematic if the menstruations are already present and regular? And actually, yes, it could mess up the cycle a bit. Let's say that a woman wants to use Motherwort to calm down an overexcited nervous system, and her cycle is fine. Well, it could provoke unexpected bleeding in this person. The plant is somewhat unpredictable in that regard. Have I seen this happen? Yes, I have seen it several times, so I always keep that in mind. Motherwort can also help a person to get through painful periods with pain and cramps, what we call dysmenorrhea. And again, it will work better if this is accompanied by a state of stress, or if stress makes the pain and the cramps worse. Motherwort's alkaloids have a slightly vasodilating effect, and this vascular effect probably also contributes to the decongesting effect on the uterine sphere, promoting a better circulation, better function around the uterus. But if the circulation is already fine in this area, if there's no congestion, then maybe that blood moving effect could be a little too much. Let's stay with women's condition and talk about menopause. The most common complaint of menopause are hot flashes. And Motherwort, as we've seen, is cooling and calming in nature. And it could help here. It could be combined with sage, Salvia officinalis, sage bringing some warmth if the constitution of the person is already cold. And it is particularly indicated when there are palpitation or anxiety or both with the hot flashes. Here's another old indication: absence of lochia. Lochia refers to the normal vaginal discharge happening right after childbirth, and it contains blood, mucus, and other things to be evacuated. Professor John King, a leader of eclectic medicine in the United States in the 1800s, considered Motherwort superior to any other remedy for the absence of lochia after childbirth. And he recommended internal use and external application as a poultice on the lower abdomen. And he said you can achieve excellent result here. Of course, today, this situation will be handled by the medical profession in most countries. In terms of forms and quantities, a simple tea can be used, 1 small tablespoon of the cut and dried herb per cup, 1 to 3 cups a day. Now, warning, it does not taste good at all. It can even bring nausea in the sensitive person. Cutting the bitterness can be achieved with lemon juice, but it will still be difficult to drink. If you want to use Motherwort as a tea, formulate a tea blend. Bring other tasty herbs into the blend. Like if you wanted to calm the axis, nervous system, and heart, you could do a blend with hawthorn, rose petals, and fresh lemon balm, for instance. This would be a lot more balanced. That being said, the tincture is the preferred form here. You can tincture the dried plant at a ratio of 1 to 5, meaning 100 grams of the dried plant for 500 milliliter of 40 or 50% alcohol. The dose would be 30 to 60 drops in a little water 1 to 4 times a day, depending on the person and the condition. You could tincture the fresh plant as well at a ratio of 1 to 2, meaning 100 grams of the fresh plant for 200 milliliter of pure alcohol, right? 80 to 90% alcohol. You need to cut the plant very finely for the alcohol to cover the plant. Same dosage, and this would be my favorite form. It's just quite effective as a fresh plant tincture. In terms of precautions, there are a few you should be aware of. It is contraindicated during pregnancy due to a tonic effect on the uterine muscles. It can sometimes provoke unexpected bleeding in women, as we discussed. Not recommended for people taking anticoagulant medications, and it is not recommended for people with hypothyroidism, as it will slightly lower the thyroid function. And that's all I wanted to share regarding Motherwort, and that's already a lot. I left several indications that I thought would just dilute the profile of the plant. For instance, it has some digestive properties, being bitter. It can act as a diaphoretic during infection and fever, etc. But, I love this simple trio of properties: action on the nervous system, on the heart, and on the female reproductive system. And we added a fourth one, which is the thyroid, the hyperfunction of the thyroid. And we keep in mind that the overall energetics is cooling, calming, slowing certain functions, although on the uterine blood circulation, it does have a moving, invigorating effect, sometimes a little too much. And that goes a long way toward understanding what this complex herb can do for us. I hope I did not make things too complicated. Thanks for being here. I will see you very soon for the next episode of The French Herbal.